We have our January 2021 business meeting. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Yes, Basine,
Here.
Clanton,
Present.
Clanton.
You said present.
What about Campson?
Did I say I said Campson first, then Clanton.
You didn't say
Right.
Campson.
Okay, so you're both
But I
here.
am here.
Gabriel,
Present.
Jordan,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
and Martin.
Here. Okay, first thing on our agenda is our executive session. Ms. Tanner, can you please read the motion?
Move that members of the school board go into a closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for a discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the Norfolk Public Schools pursuant to subsection 1 of the above cited code section. The subjects of this portion of the session are the discussion of today's regular personnel agenda and a discussion of the merits of specific candidates for appointments to various school board committees. Then B, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members concerning actual or probable litigation or specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsection 7 and 8 of the above cited code section. The subjects of this section of the motion are consultation and briefing regarding the matters set out in section A of this motion. Basine,
I move that we go into closed session per the motion read.
that's right.
Second.
Thank you, sorry.
Sorry about that. 403. Yes, Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Yes.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. Okay, we'll see you in executive session. I sent the link out just a few minutes ago, so you should have it in your inbox. Can I get a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that we come out of closed session.
I
Second.
Okay, Ms. Basine seconded. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll or read the resolution and then call the roll.
A resolution certifying an executive meeting of the school board of the city of Norfolk in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Whereas the school board of the city of Norfolk has convened a closed session on this date pursuant to an affirmative vote, recorded vote, and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board of the city of Norfolk that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be resolved that the school board of the city of Norfolk hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the executive meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the executive meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board of the city of Norfolk. Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin. Martin, you're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, everyone. So now we are now moving into the business meeting portion. And so I will duly call this meeting to order. Ms. Tanner, could you call the roll?
Yes. Basine,
Here.
Campson,
Here.
Clanton,
Present.
Gabriel,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Clanton.
I'd like to move to amend the agenda by adding item 4.07 to the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Approval of school board advisory committee appointments.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Ms. Smith seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Ms. Tanner, please call the vote.
Basine,
Aye.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. All right, thank you. Okay, this evening, on Inauguration Day, we're going to have our alternate student representative, Miss Amelia Burrs, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, Madam Chair Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Jordan, Superintendent Dr. Sharon Birdsong, board members, and our viewers. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burrs. Okay, I believe we have a student musical performance. Dr. Birdsong, would you like to make the introduction?
Yes.
Great.
Good evening and Happy New Year. I think this is our first business meeting of the new year. So Happy New Year, everyone. So today we have a wonderful group, the orchestra from Moray High School. Mr. Featherer is the conductor, and I present to you our orchestra from Moray High School.
Thank you very much. It was beautiful. It's really, difficult. I guess Ms. Roby's not with us today, and the student isn't here. Is the student here? Student's not here. Okay, so anyways, that was absolutely gorgeous, and as usual, such a treat, to be able to include this on the virtual environment, when we can't be together in person, and it's just amazing the talent that we have in our musical program. So it's always the highlight of our meetings. Thank you very much for having it. And Dr. Birdsong, would you like to continue with your superintendent's report?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, members of the board, and members of our community. The superintendent's report for this month is a recap of the first semester, highlighting the wonderful things that took place during the first half of a challenging yet rewarding school year. First up in this video, you will hear from Dr. Dennis Moore, our Senior Director of Student Wellness, as he provides an overview of the inventory of PPE equipment that we have on hand to help protect the health of individuals when they are in our school buildings. Next, you will remember our Executive Directors of Schools visited principals at the beginning of the school year to ensure that their buildings were prepared to safely open for in-person instruction once health conditions improve. Then Virginia Secretary of Education, Edith Carney, took a moment from his busy schedule for a virtual visit with kindergarten students at Granby Elementary School to read Mango, Abuela, and Me. Secretary Carney also joined us along with a few of our elected officials for the annual Bring Your Legislator to School Day event, which was hosted virtually this year to engage students about the election process as well as governance and policymaking. Up next, you will recall that the specialty programs showcase was held virtually this year. While our unique circumstances changed the format, it actually proved to be a great opportunity to reach more families with videos that highlighted the benefits of enrolling in these programs. Then we revisit the amazing murals painted by a couple of our art teachers in the city's Neon District as an effort to visually express the importance of equality and social justice. Next, we'll take a look back at the RISE Award recipient, Richard Hilton, who is a building supervisor with our Department of School Nutrition and received the award for his outstanding service in his support staff role. Then you'll remember Granby High School senior Nora Wilkerson, who was recently recognized as one of 5 finalists in Virginia for the U.S. Presidential Scholars Award in the area of career and technical education. And just recently, Booker T. Washington High School's principal, Dr. Margie Stallings, and athletic director Robin Williams accepted a check for a $10,000 grant from Pro Football Hall of Famer and Booker T alum Bruce Smith and the NFL Foundation. Then we quickly revisit STEM Education Week, which was also held virtually in December with some of our fifth graders and partners at Naval Station Norfolk. And last but not least, we'll close by remembering 2 outstanding educators and profound members of the NPS family whom we lost this school year. Both Dr. Anna Dotson and Mrs. Lucy Zelski touched the lives of so many and will be greatly missed. And now let's play the video to see the recap of the first semester of the 2020-2021 school year.
Norfolk Public Schools, teachers, staff, and students persevered as teaching and learning remained virtual during the first half of the school year. Here are some of the highlights from a challenging yet rewarding first semester.
Over the past month or so, we've been receiving PPE equipment from vendors that we've ordered from to prepare for the opening of schools, the eventual opening with children coming back. And so we've been receiving materials. We're interested in keeping staff and children safe. We have a variety of different PPE equipment to do that. And as children come back in the building, we want to have the masks and the sanitizers and the gloves and the germ shields and stuff like that, face shields, that'll help protect students.
Elementary and secondary executive directors visited principals at every school in the district to ensure that they were ready to safely welcome students back to their buildings once health metrics improved.
I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity to see what our staff, the amount of work they have put into this virtual learning environment. You can tell the compassion from every school is very consistent because we want to send a consistent message throughout our district that we are truly prepared to receive our students once we return face-to-face district-wide.
Virtual classes continued, but they were able to welcome guests, such as State Secretary of Education Edith Carney, who visited a Granby Elementary kindergarten class to read Mango, Abuela, and Me to the students.
I think he did great. I know that his background is more of a middle school and high school teacher, but he's great with kids, so it was fun having him read to them and let them hear a new story. I think that any story is great to read to kindergartners just to try to expose them to more and let them see more things and hear different vocabulary. So they got to hear some Spanish words, and that's a new experience for some of them. But for others who knew those Spanish words, it was a bit inclusive.
Legislators had the opportunity to see and hear what's going on in our school system.
We had our Bring Your Legislative School Day, and though it was in a different context, being totally virtual, I think that it was a great opportunity for us to engage and to be able to bring legislators, policymakers, both at the local, state, and the federal together to be able to have a conversation, but also to experience what some of our students and our teachers are going through on a daily basis in a virtual environment.
For the first time ever, the Specialty Program Showcase was held virtually on Channel 47 and our YouTube site, which enabled educators to reach more students and parents by creating videos highlighting the benefits of their programs.
We are so excited. We asked TV 47 to help us create a virtual showcase night for our specialty programs because we aren't able to do it in person, but we still wanted that feel and we wanted the excitement around it that there has been in years past, and we really want to get the good information out to families.
2 NPS art teachers are scaling walls for art and justice in Norfolk's Neon District. Clayton Singleton of Lake Taylor High School and Nicole Harp of Granby High School are helping to fight for justice and equality the best way they can, through art.
It's important for me as an individual to speak out as an artist and an individual about equality, but more so for my students. I want them to know that I stand firm and strong with them, and I know their voices are they have strong opinions about equality and fairness. And every single one of them has spoken up in the beginning of this year. And to be honest, it gives me hope. It gives me hope that this generation is so aware and they're starting to have opinions and feel they matter and speak out. And I want them to know I'm supporting them.
Imagine you're at a protest, right? And there's sound, there's energy, there's purpose, there's promise. So like the gentleman that has on the headphones, it's almost as if this is the music he's hearing as you're in the protest. This is not noise, this is not chaos, this is organized love, basically. So he's listening to that. Then you see the people in the forefront who are like chanting for what they believe in, which is love. At the end of the day, it comes down to love.
Richard Hilton, a building supervisor at School Nutrition, was nominated for the RISE Award, which is for classified employees who provide outstanding service to students and the community.
Well, his attitude is very fun-loving and very happy. You'll never catch Rick complaining about anything. He always has a little joke to tell, or he always brings a smile to your face when you encounter him.
I'm grateful they have that confidence in me, but anyway, I see a lot of other folks that would certainly deserve it. And anyway, so I feel humbled and grateful at the same time.
Granby High School senior Nora Wilkerson became the first NPS student to be nominated as one of 5 finalists to represent Virginia in the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program in the area of career and technical education.
I feel super excited, and I am so honored to have been nominated for such a prestigious position as a student. And yeah, I'm just super happy to have this opportunity to display who I am and what I stand for and what my passions are. After high school, I want to pursue a career in aviation and in aerospace engineering. That's what I've always wanted to do, and it is what I will do. Granted, there's a long road ahead of me, but this nomination is one of the best steps I could have taken to getting to where I want to go.
Booker T. Washington's football team received a boost in the form of a $10,000 grant from the NFL Foundation. Pro Football Hall of Famer and Booker T alum Bruce Smith presented the check. 5th graders throughout Norfolk Public Schools enjoyed a week of virtual STEM activities thanks to our partners at Naval Station Norfolk.
I like how we learned that different colors, they can be made out of certain other colors, and we don't see them, and we could interact with that part of the project.
Our motivation really is to spark an interest, or maybe fan the flames of those that are already interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics with a strategic look to the future. We need our young ladies and gentlemen to be the best and brightest when they graduate out of high school, and we need them to consider maybe joining the military.
Norfolk Public Schools lost 2 amazing women whose love for all students and our district lasted most of their lifetimes. Dr. Anna Dotson was a teacher, administrator, school board member, and mentor to students and teachers alike. Lucy Zelski was the longest tenured teacher in NPS history. She spent over 50 years serving students at Little Creek Elementary, Azalea Gardens Middle, and Madison Alternative School.
So, after 48 years, did you think you would still be here with this teacher hat on?
You know, I never thought about the years, but I've always loved teaching so much that it's what I am. And I did not, of course, neglect my family. That was always first. And my children were educated in Norfolk Public Schools. And I credit Lake Taylor with my children's success. Not only did those teachers teach, but they inspired my children, who went on to colleges. The girls went to William and Mary, Chris went to VMI, and they all have advanced degrees. The teachers, you know, there wouldn't be doctors or lawyers without teachers, right?
Right.
Teachers are the most wonderful people in the world. They are.
Both of these outstanding educators will be greatly missed.
Thank you, Madam Chair Martin, Mr. Vice Chairman Jordan, and members of the school board. That last clip of Mrs. Zelski was taken from an NPS Now segment where she was interviewed by Karen Tanner for having the longest tenure of any Norfolk Public Schools teacher, which at that time was 48 years of service. That soundbite captures the essence of who Mrs. Zelski was to so many of us over the last 5 decades, and is a true testament not only to her dedication to public education, but also to Norfolk Public Schools. As many of you know, I worked closely with Mrs. Zelski throughout my tenure as principal of Azalea Gardens Middle School, and the news of her passing has been especially difficult. I would like to take a moment to give a personal tribute to her. As I reflect upon the time that I've known Mrs. Zelski, there's so many fond memories that come to mind. After being appointed the principal of Azalea Gardens Middle School, I have the extraordinary memory of Mrs. Zelski greeting me as a brand new principal at the front doors of the school with a knowing smile of excitement, and that would continue throughout our cherished and memorable time together at our beloved AGMS. Mrs. Z, as she is affectionately known, was an exemplary mentor to hundreds of teachers and quintessential educator to thousands of students, whom she referred to as her precious lambs. I quickly took notice of Mrs. Zelski's extraordinary talent, skills, and abilities, and I assigned her to a building level instructional specialist position as she embodied every aspect of that critical role. And even upon her reassignment, she did not let go of her true love of being a classroom teacher. As you heard her mention that in the video clip, Mrs. Z never met a student with whom she could not connect, as was evident in her masterful approach to building strong relationships with students and her keen ability to motivate them to achieve success. Mrs. Z sincerely believed that all students have unique gifts and the potential to achieve at exceptional levels, especially with a standard of high expectations. She exuded this mantra when she joined the team at the Madison Alternative Center as a transition specialist. Mrs. Z was always eager to collaborate with her peers on various school initiatives and was instrumental in developing a student mentoring program comprised of African American male students who are mentored by African American attorneys, graduates of the College of William and Mary, Mrs. Z's alma mater. Mrs. Zelski was respected and loved by all who knew her, and her genuine care extended far beyond professional relationships. She has been an inspiration to me on both a personal and professional level, even forming a very special relationship with my own daughter, as she did with so many of her students through handwritten letters and words of encouragement as they matriculated throughout their schooling. With over 50 years of dedicated service to Norfolk Public Schools, Mrs. Zelski leaves behind a legacy that is rare and a lasting impact that will serve as a continuous reminder that equity and excellence is truly possible for all. On behalf of our Norfolk Public Schools family, we extend our sincerest condolences to Mrs. Zelski's family and loved ones. She will be missed tremendously and will forever hold a special place in our hearts. Thank you for allowing me to have that moment to honor her memory. And this concludes my remarks for the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. That's a beautiful tribute. Thank you. It's a very emotional time. It's like losing family. But of course, we value all of our teachers, so that's a really amazing legacy. Thank you for taking the time. Next, yes?
I appreciate Dr. Birdsong and sharing that. And Mrs. Zelski, Mrs. E, is the longest tenured member with Norfolk Public Schools with over 53 years of service. And I think that this board should recognize her in the form of an official resolution to be entered into the record. And so without objection, I'd like to, from the board, to instruct the clerk to be able to generate such a resolution to be brought back at the appropriate time to be presented to her family.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for volunteering. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have the school board clerk's report. Ms. Tanner.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As part of the school board clerk's report, I'd like to note some special observances for January, February, and then I'll get into some new hires for October. January is National Mentoring Month, and this was launched in 2002 by the group Mentor, and this month is designated to raise awareness of mentoring in its various forms, recruit individuals to mentor, especially in programs that have waiting lists for young people, and promote the rapid growth of mentoring by recruiting organizations to engage their constituents in mentoring. And then next, we have the upcoming observances for February. National School Counseling Week is February 1st through the 5th. Virginia Crossing Guard Appreciation Day is February 10th. National PTA Take Your Family to School Week is February 14th through the 21st. School Board Clerk Appreciation Week is February 15th through the 19th. Virginia Crossing Guard Day is February 10th. And Safe Routes to School and Crossing Guard Month is in February. VSBA School Board Appreciation Month, which will do something very special for our board members next month. And then also Career and Technical Education Month is in the month of February. And right now, I want to segue to a special recognition for our new hires. Just one moment. Okay. I have to switch over and pull the report up. We're starting something different because we're not able to greet our new hires in person. We want to be able to show who those individuals are. And for this go round for October to now, we have 8 new administrators that we will be recognizing. And of course, we have technology that's taking its time. Just one moment. Okay, what's going on? Okay, hold on just one moment. Here we go. Okay. Is it showing? It's not. Okay, here we go. Our system's a little lagging behind, so we apologize that. But our board members, I want you guys to get ready to give special recognition to the 8 new hires that we're getting ready to show right now. The first one is Heather Steed, Operations Manager in School Nutrition.
Rodney's Crack me up.
Awesome. Next, we have Millard Hobbs. He's a Senior Director of Accounting.
Yay! Welcome.
Next, we have me, Clerk of the School Board for the Norfolk School Board.
Oh, yeah.
Next, we have Kanita Matthews, who's on Zoom with us tonight too, our Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer.
Welcome.
Next, we have Andrew Davenport, Human Resources Generalist.
Yay!
And we also have Timothy Mallory, Senior Coordinator in Student Support Services.
Welcome, Timothy.
And we have Jackie Plude, Senior Coordinator for Student Support Services. And we have Heather Medina, Senior Buyer for Purchases and Supply.
Welcome to Team NPS.
And welcome to Norfolk Public Schools, and congratulations on your recent appointments.
Thank you for that.
Dr. Martin, I just have to say, take a privilege here. I think Mr. Jordan has stolen all his daughters' pom-poms through the years. I just noticing the color change. I'm just.
That's an MPS fan.
Good observation.
We definitely get an honorable mention with that backdrop. Way to go. Go team.
Great. Thank you all so much. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. And so it's just a little act of appreciation for our new hires and their contribution to the success of our students. So thank you all for joining Team MPS. Okay, well, moving on to the next item, we have approval of our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept our consent agenda?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
And Gabriel seconded. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Yes. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. Nice have it. Wonderful. Okay. Next, under our decision and discussion agenda, we have the monthly financial report. Mr. Jenkins?
Good evening. And I think Ms. Tanner will pull up the reports. Good evening, Chairwoman Martin, Vice Chairman Jordan, Dr. Birdsong, and members of the school board. I'll briefly review the December financial report with you, and if we can turn to the next page. You can see here that for the first 6 months, we collected $126.2 million of general fund revenue. This represents 37.4% of our $337 million budget. For the same 6 months, we collected 46.5% of our budget in fiscal 2020 and 45% of the fiscal 2019 budget. On page 3 of the highlights, we see revenue and spending to date. During the first 6 months, we spent or encumbered $140.8 million, or 41.8% of our budget. Again, revenues totaled $126.2 million. While we have received less in revenue than we've spent or committed, our cash position is positive. Outstanding purchase orders account for nearly $11 million, and a portion of the teacher, staff, and wages earned to date aren't released until this summer. So we have a positive cash balance. During the previous 2 years, spending for the first 6 months was 42% of the 2020 budget and 41.1% of the 2019 budget, very similar to this year. On page 4, there are 2 graphs of monthly revenue and spending for each month of the year. The current year is in the red columns through December. Monthly comparisons of the two previous years are displayed in blue and orange. An estimate of our monthly budget is in the green, shaded in the green. More detailed information is available starting on page 5. On page 15 of your report is a quarterly grant status report. This summarizes spending and commitments of grant funds. At December 31st, our federal grants totaled $94.4 million, for which we had committed $63.9 million, or 68%. We spent approximately 47% of the state grants, totaling $5.3 million, which is on page 18. Grant status report does not include the most recent coronavirus response and relief grant that was approved by Congress last month. Staff is currently working on that application. There were no budget transfers during December over $50,000, so you won't see that. And Dr. Martin, that concludes my report. If you or any members have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I have a few questions. First, on page, I guess it's after page 6, page 7, it is I was wondering if you could speak to the tuition recovery for dual enrollment, which seemed to be, over the 100%. Could you speak to that?
I would have to investigate exactly why, but I mean, it's not unusual for revenue to exceed our budget estimates, and it could be that we have more offerings. I would need to actually investigate that, and I can do that and let you know.
Okay. And then on the grants report, I have a few questions there as well. Let me just get to it. Let me see. So for this, so I like for the CARES Act fund allocations. Is there a table, or is there some way that the board at some point, could look and see what particulars or what items that CARES Act money has been used for the 3 packages that we've received thus far? Is one question. I don't know if you want to, if you're able to provide that to us. I think, a couple board members have asked about that, including myself in the past.
Certainly, if that's the will of the board, we're happy to do that.
So your question is where that money was spent as far as for CARES PPE?
Not just PPE, but the CARES Act money can be used for a variety of things, programs, specific to related to this pandemic. And so, for, the CARES Act fund, I think it would be good for the board to see exactly what monies have been spent, what the monies have been spent on for each of those packages.
And just to remind the board, we did provide you a report in November of that.
Right. There was a report, and then since then we've had, I don't believe we've had an update on that since November.
Well,
so
let me
I think,
guess, December was a short month, and
right.
We're barely through January, but we're happy to provide updates.
Right. And I recall also in November asking for a little more of a description on some of those items. But I think it would be important to take a look at that, especially as we get into our budget discussions, to ensure that, we are covering our needs. Next, for the 21st Century grants, and this may be something that, I just am less familiar with, but is there a reason that the percent of the award used is so different among the schools?
Well, each school would have its own program, and I believe that the projects were individually developed. But also, actually, the main reason is the Suburban Park Grant, for instance, was an award from 2018. So that's been going for much longer than, say, the Suburban Park Grant that's in 2020 in Norview and Monroe. So actually, the length of time that the grant has been in effect is probably the biggest explanation.
Okay, that makes sense. I totally missed that piece, and that's probably true for the Perkins also, the Perkins grant. Which, my question was, is 11% a result of not being in school this year? That is significantly lower. No?
Well, I would need to get back with you. I am not that familiar with that particular grant, and I see that grant actually started in July of 2019.
Right.
So I would have to investigate further.
Okay. And then Madam, I have a couple more. Or did you have something to add to that, Ms. Smith?
Yes, if you don't mind. So, Mr. Jenkins, to what Ms. Vacine is saying, some of those 21st century grants, they began in 2020, and you did say you were going to go look at it, and they're going to expire in about 7 months or so. Right. So as we're looking at it, I started having the same question. Is the fact that we're not in the classroom like we normally are or would be, is that having an impact on our ability to execute any of these grants to the level that we would normally be able to execute them?
Right. And that was part of my final question. Yeah. What happens? Are there waivers for, if we aren't able to expend the amounts that are granted?
I know for Title I this past year, there was a waiver and an extension. I don't know specifically about the 21st Century Grant, but that would I'd have to investigate it, and I could get back with you if that's your preference.
Yes, I do believe that the grant at Suburban Park was allowed to carry over from last year due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Okay.
Dr. Birdsong. Okay. Ms. Vacine, do you have another question?
Well, and related, the Title III grant for immigrant youth. So I noticed that there was no expenditures made. Tied into the same question, but can you elaborate on that?
As I recall, both of those grants were written for specific purposes. And when we weren't holding school in session, that became problematic. The purpose of the grants, I believe, was for something that was for in-person instruction.
Okay.
So I believe those two are definitely affected by the virtual learning phase that we're now in.
Okay, so that is specific to in-person learning. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about the financial report? Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept the financial report as presented?
I move to accept the financial report as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
And Ms. Smith seconded. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Vacine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye. And the ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, we're on to item 5.02, the School Resource Officer Program MOU.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Clinton.
I'd like to make a motion. To put forth a motion regarding the Resource Officer Program and MOU. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to move for the adoption of the presented MOU regarding School Resource Officer Program.
Second.
Ms. Campson, you seconded, is that?
Yes. Yes.
All right, I want to open it up for discussion. Any comments? Ms. Campson, Mr. Clinton, I'm sorry, Mr. Clinton, Ms. Campson, Ms. Basine, Ms. Smith.
All right, thank you, Dr. Martin. So we have gone through the process. We've had public comment regarding the SRO program. I've shared comments in the past regarding the SRO program, and we've met with community stakeholders. I know I've met with some who have wanted us to get rid of the SRO program, but I have shared, and I share here today, Dr. Gabriel and myself go back because we were debaters, and there was the term that we used to use, which was the prima facie argument in the respect of why do something. And as a Lincoln Douglas debater, I always had to look at things. And so I always look at things on both sides of the argument, affirmative or negative may be. But also in another role and position of mine, having served in a national role with the National Civil Rights Organization, this is very passionate to me when we talk about defunding the police and we talk about a lot of things that are going on in our communities, particular communities of color. This is a passion for me. So when I looked at this particular item here, I have researched, I've looked at the research that's been presented, and I've asked for individuals to present why make the case for changing the SRO program here in Norfolk. And to be perfectly honest, I've seen a lot of national information, national sources, studies that have really not pinpointed Norfolk, other than an economic study that I saw from the Brookings Institute. And I've sat before the Brookings Institute on 3 different occasions to actually be a part of studies. And this was just simply one on economics. It's bigger than an economic issue. And when we have looked at community policing here in our communities, because we've looked at community policing in Norfolk. And again, I reference back to the civil unrest that we had, that we saw in so many of our communities, but we didn't see that in Norfolk. We didn't see vandalism. We saw our police officers, our police chief walking hand in hand with protesters. And I've been a direct, as a Norfolk Public School graduate, have seen the power of SROs in our schools. I've seen them as mentors. I've seen them as coaches and wrestling coaches. I've seen even one serving as a former classmate of mine as a graduate of class of '98 from Maury High School. So I don't think changing or taking out the SRO programs today, that there's been a justified or justifiable reason to do so. However, I do believe that the MRU that has been presented to us does take an account in the respect of making sure that we properly monitor, that we report, that when there are allegations or individuals have complaints, that we're able to take those things into consideration and to bring them forth. And that I think the MOU, along with the handbook that was presented by the state from 2017, provides us the necessary resources and a blueprint to ensure that we continue to have a program that is productive. Lastly, with that, I'd much rather for our children, our young citizens, our scholars, to have a positive relationship and experience with police in a proper school setting than on the streets without having that, we have a lot of situations where individuals of color are pulled over and they get in a lot of trouble because they don't know how to handle themselves or in that particular situation. Again, I re-reference the fact that we have surveyed our teachers, our students, and those surveys came back and showed to us that our teachers and our staff members overwhelmingly say that they feel comfortable having them because they serve as a deterrent in our school. And lastly, with that, I referenced the situation that we had at Maury High School. There was an SRO officer present in our building. We had a gun that was discharged in that building, unfortunately, in the situation. However, if that SRO who was there was able to call calling backup, able to call directly to authorities to get them there so that the administrators and teachers could focus on the students. I think that there are many great benefits that we have to continue to build a relationship. And with that, until such cause, if they can show me identifiable information that says that we should change the program, I encourage my colleagues to move forward with the MOU and that we continue to study over the necessary time. And then once we've gotten some hard, concrete information that says otherwise, that we move with the MOU. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. Next, I have Ms. Campson.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. I'm sorry, Dr. Martin. I spent a long time as a principal in an elementary school. And what a lot of people may not realize is that we had police officers in full uniform working in our elementary schools as DARE officers when the anti-drug program was going so strong. And we had them come one day a week. We had officers in our building. And I think one thing, if we look at that, and they were fully uniformed, is that you don't build relationships with people from different backgrounds or different jobs if you don't ever communicate with them. If you can't tear down walls of prejudice and bias if you never communicate, you never have an opportunity to meet people and get to know them. If you continue to isolate yourself from them, you just build the wall higher. And so when those officers came into our schools, the students were so excited to have them there because they worked very hard. They were fully trained police officers, and then they took extra training to come into our elementary schools with our little children. And the children couldn't wait for them because the officers, yes, they did the DARE classes, but to tell you the truth, the relationship building that they did with our children, with their having lunch in the cafeteria with them, reading to them. Some officers took some time, extra time they had, and would sit down and tutor some of our kids, mostly math. For some reason, the police officers like doing math the most instead of just reading. But those relationships built, and the children were so excited. So I know we see, I heard the same thing that Mr. Clanton did, because I talked to community people and organizations too, where they talked about seeing things on TV. Well, is that the only way we want our children to be exposed because one bad apple did something wrong? And then they had this huge attitude about the police officers when the vast majority of our police officers are caring, hardworking people who keep us safe. And that's what they need to see. And that's what they saw when they came into our elementary schools. This never was an issue. So at the elementary level. So that's something I want you to keep in mind, that the way we tear down prejudice and bigotry is we take the barriers away and we get to know each other. And I think that would help our children as they grow up without having that negative attitude. So I will be voting in support of this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Campson. I have Ms. Basine next.
And if you don't mind, I think I saw Ms. Smith's hand up before mine. I'll defer my time. If you can call me after Ms. Smith, that would be great.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. So go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you, Dr. Martin. I'll be brief. So I support safety in the schools. I support SROs. My primary concern and that of community members is them being armed in the schools. I think we can have law and order, if you will, within our buildings without having that extra concern along with it. So that's the primary thing that I do not agree with or support in this particular MOU.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Go ahead, Ms. Basine.
Thank you. So in June, I believe this board expressed their commitment to racial justice. Along with that, we've had this aspirational mission of being the cornerstone of a proudly diverse community. I share a lot of the thoughts expressed by Mr. Clanton as well. But one thing, I would like for us to consider is that, yes, we've received input from teachers and students, but I don't feel that we have yet, given it the examination that it really deserves, which is, how many, with really a full look at the data that would lend itself to making a decision around whether SROs is the measure that we want to take. And for example, I'll share with you, I had asked, if we could see the demographic data of the individuals who did complete the surveys. I think it absolutely matters who's completing the surveys and who has the perceptions of feelings of safety versus those who do not have the feelings of safety. That matters to me. We also have a public comment period that's out there. And I'm grateful for that, but we have not seen the additional public comments that have come in. And I would really like for us to take the time to give it the examination that it deserves, whether it be to inform any future strategic planning, whether it informs, which I hope will be focused around racial justice and equity. But I really do think it warrants further examination, further consideration of restorative practices and evidence-based harm reduction and social and emotional supports, really lending to not just a culture of safety, but a culture of care. And I think we really have to take the time to really think about what that is and really look at the data a little more critically. Before we embark on this, because there is a unsurmountable amount of research on there about the harms that can be done by having the presence of SROs in the building. And I'm grateful for our SROs who are building positive relationships with our children, but still, again, it's the question of, who does that caring adult have to be in the building? And I don't believe it has to be an armed police officer. So with all that I've just said, I will not be in support of continuing this MOU.
Thank you, Ms. Vaccine. Okay, any additional comments? Vice Chair Jordan, go ahead.
Yes. I echo many of the comments that have been said by my colleagues, Dr. Martin. I too believe in safe and secure learning environments. Actually, I applaud the administration for the work that's been done on this MOU. I think it is a good step forward in the right direction. I just envision that we can do more. One of the things that I raised previously is, one time we were working on a pilot with trauma-informed care, and then we didn't complete it, and we never really had an opportunity to follow up on the benefit pros and cons from that. There were some conversations going on with the police department around restorative practice and restorative justice. I like to see us dig a little bit deeper into that and figure out ways of implementing that into our MOU. I think we can do a little more. And so I'm not suggesting that we should walk away from what we have. I think we should look at expanding even more and really doing a real deep dive around what is it that we're trying to achieve in terms of our safe and security learning environment so that students and staff and everyone feels comfortable both inside the building and outside the building. And what does that look like? It could be in the form of SROs, could be more school security officers. I recall last year during the budget discussion, and we were talking about the school security officers and whether or not there was an equity approach that we could take so that larger or high schools with more enrollment might be able to receive more security support. So I think there's much that we could do more there. I've said before, I think we could take the opportunity as we're going into our retreat, working on our governance and working on our strategic planning to build this into that effort and then come back in May or June as we project to finish that work and use this effort around safe and secure learning environments as part of that strategy. The other thing, just perhaps procedurally, so the next agenda item deals with the policy on seclusion and restraint. And we didn't have that policy on the last work session. And I'm not sure we really have done a very deep dive into issues around seclusion and restraint. If I understand the MOU and the policy correctly, we need to have a seclusion and restraint policy in place if indeed we have a MOU with the police department dealing with SROs. So the MOU speaks to some of that, but I really think that the policy and the action around seclusion and restraint needs to be dealt with first, and then that would then help inform how it is reflected in terms of training expectations as relates to the MOU and the SROs. Fairfax, Virginia Beach, Franklin County, many other school divisions, if you look at their policies and their regulations, have a much more involved and in-depth looking at both at seclusion and restraint, and as well as their MOUs as relates to SROs and how the two go together. So I think we need to be clear on what our policy is going to be, what our regulations are going to be, whether or not we do seclusion, whether or not how we do our restraints, if any, and how it is applied and how training is done. And then that should be applied to any MOU that we develop. So in the absence of that, I can't be supportive of the MOU as it is currently in place, although I am supportive of us continuing to go down this path and build it out a little bit deeper and having even more student voice and teacher voice and principal voice as part of the discussion. The last thing I'll just mention in terms of the surveys and in particular the climate surveys, I remember going through the climate survey data, and there was a lot in there that brought some concern to me, both in terms of how students felt, how teachers felt, how students felt about staff, how staff felt about students and security. I think there's a lot that needs to be unpacked there as we deal with these issues of trauma restorative practice and relationships with the police department, along with seclusion and restraints. So I think a much more holistic approach is in order. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Mr. Clanton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, in response to Mr. Jordan, I think he brings up very good points. However, I'd like to point out that I believe that those items have been properly addressed in the MOU. The MOU, particularly on page 9 of 11, talks about physical restraint by personnel and arrest. And what we were also presented in our packet was the handbook that accompanied the SRO program, which talked about a lot of the things I brought up maybe 2 meetings ago about restorative practices, restorative justice, detention and arrest, which is actually broken down on page 14.9, section H, detention and arrest, which talks about that is not a function of the police. That is a function of our school security officers, and only if there is law being broken do the SROs get involved in that particular process. But it also talks about the effective building of relationships with partnerships through the SROs, which gets very detailed, which I don't believe that I saw. This was approved May 2017. And it's one of the things that I go back and I hearken about why I do support what we have in place now is because I believe the proper resources and the time has been taken to look at the SRO program and to look at it as a partnership. It focuses on special education, bullying prevention and intervention, truancy prevention, suicide prevention, conflict resolution, mediation, and peer mediation. These are all things that are critical to ensure that we have students in school, that they're safe, that we can talk about making sure that kids graduate on time and that we provide a safe and secure learning environment. So I don't disagree with what my colleague is saying, but I do believe that the necessary items are in place. And once we vote on the MOU, we'll be taking care of the actual policy item there, which we didn't bring up because it was really dealing with the Commonwealth of Virginia and code regulations that we were updating. So again, I just wanted to clarify where those items are looking at that, and that we do have not only a model MOU that was looked at other MOUs across the Commonwealth, but we do have a very extensive document that will help us support in what SROs are doing. And I agree, as we begin to look at our strategic plan, how we can look at other areas that we can not only use them in this as another opportunity for us to expand, but also look at how we can bring other opportunities with the community to support our students. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, since I was addressed in response to that. So I'm aware of the guidance document that Mr. Clanton mentioned. I had the opportunity to participate on some of those committees. I have no question about the guidance document. There's all kind of guidance there. What I'm speaking specifically to is, as a school board, we have a policy that we'll address next dealing with seclusion and restraints. As part of that policy, we currently have the VSBA framing of the policy. There's also a requirement there around the administration of superintendent putting forth regulations. I've read the MOU and I understand what the MOU says in terms of who is responsible for what things. What I'm suggesting is that policy around seclusion and restraints, as well as the regulations around it, are very important and have impact around how we handle a variety of things. And so I had the opportunity to just today, because when I saw the seclusion and restraint policy pop up, I went back and did some review. I'm just suggesting that there are some deeper things that we need to consider around this. And even if it's the will of the board to adopt this tonight, that's fine. I'll be back at the next meeting and I'll be sharing these additional concerns around the seclusion and restraint that I think warrants deeper attention from our governance team. And I also think that there are some additional matters that we need to consider around training and professional development as relates to restorative practices and as relates to implicit bias and so forth. So we receive guidance all the time. I support the guidance. I love best practices. But at the end of the day, we also have to consider what makes sense for Norfolk Public Schools, and also how do we monitor and manage implementation and professional development training with fidelity. And I think there's more that we can do there. And that's just my take on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jordan. Ms. Campson, go ahead.
I just want to leave one reminder with everyone as we go into the vote. Let's help our children and the police build their relationships. Let's not build any more walls.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Campson. I think this has been a really wonderful discussion. All very, very good points. Are there any more comments before we go to vote? Ms. Burrs, would you like to make a comment?
Hi, thank you. While I do feel like these officers could assist some students in building new relationships and like having positive connotations, I feel like their presence could also trigger unresolved trauma that some of our other students could have. And that might be a concern that you should take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Simpson, go ahead.
Yes, just to piggyback a little bit off of what Amelia said, I just wonder, as a student, how could the funds and resources being used towards armed officers be reallocated in more useful ways? And I know that I think Mr. Clanton talked about suicide prevention and conflict resolution. And I see these things as, also being able to be resolved by mental health counselors in schools. So I see that as another important way that those resources could be reallocated in our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Just for clarification, the SROs are not paid for out of the school board's budget. They're paid for by the Norfolk Police Department. And we are also, so this isn't just a one, this is part, the SROs or any type of whatever security program that we decide on is actually part of a more comprehensive approach. And so just, because we would have any, SROs or SSOs in our schools doesn't mean we wouldn't also be pursuing mental health and counselors within our schools as well. Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to respond to that. Yes, that's true. However, I do think that $1 million in funds that are used toward the SRO program could be used to support, to provide supports in, social and emotional supports for our students on top of what the state is already doing. If you look at the ratios for SROs to students versus our counselors to students, you might, see some discrepancies. I feel like we spend a lot more on security than we do on the other supports. So I just, I think it's important to have partnerships outside the community. Like, I know my colleagues have talked about, partnering with other mental health providers outside of the school building. But I do think that connection, that bridge between what we are providing in school is important, just as we are developing those partnerships outside of school. So I just want to put that to the forefront and, for your consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Birdsong, can you speak to the funding? So if just because, so I want to make sure I didn't misspeak. So if the SROs are paid for through the Norfolk Police Department, so if there's $1.5 million, can you help clarify? We wouldn't get that anyways, would we? I mean, that's how I understood it, but if I'm wrong, please correct me.
So the city of Norfolk, through the police department, yes, they financially support the program. And if this board decides that they no longer want the support of the SRO program and they'll no longer be working in our schools, that's the city manager's decision, the police department's decision about how they will utilize that funding. We can't direct the city manager on what, as far as I know. But Mr. Cloud is jumping in, so I may be wrong. So I'll mute and let him speak.
Okay, Mr. Cloud.
The cost of the SRO program is basically the salaries and benefits of the police officers. Mm-hmm. None of the police officers that are SROs in your schools are probationary police officers. They're all permanent, tenured police officers. If the SRO program ends, there will be no savings for the city because they will just continue as police officers and will perform other duties. In fact, they perform other duties now. They could not be terminated at the end of the program. So there would not be any savings for the city if the program were to end.
Thank you, Mr. Cloud. Dr. Birdsong, did you want to add anything to that? Okay.
No, Mr. Cloud would be the expert in that. Okay. Makes complete sense.
Okay, thank you so much.
Madam Chair, call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Basine?
Nay.
Hampson?
Yes.
Clanton?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye.
Jordan?
Nay.
Smith?
No.
Martin?
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it, and I'm pretty sure this is not the last time we're reviewing this program or having these discussions. But again, I appreciate all the comments from my colleagues, and as we move forward, and again, this is not a one-pronged approach. It's going to be very comprehensive. So, so thank you all for your input. Next on our agenda, we have the policy discussion. Mr. Pohl, will you be?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to bring forward the policy discussion for both KNAJ and JM. As you know, we put out opportunity for public comment. There were no comments received for policy JM. And the only comment received for KNAJ was in regards to the principal being able to, or a designee being able to sit in if an officer had to question or interrogate a student, as long as the principal or designee put good faith effort to contact the parent or guardian. There was one comment that said they did not like that part of it, that they feel their parent should be there if the student's being questioned.
Okay. And it doesn't say vote required on our agenda, so I'm kind of second guessing myself. Are we voting on this today?
My understanding was we would bring it for discussion and vote tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't say vote. Okay, just making sure. So can I get a motion to accept policy JM and policy KNAJ? Ms. Basine?
Yeah, I think Ms. Basine is trying to.
Yeah, I Mr. Clinton will remember this, but, these policies are ones that we talked about public comment, but we also talked about deliberately providing to our Special Education Advisory Council for review and discussion. And I don't believe that has taken place. And I do believe we should give some consideration to the comments that Mr. Jordan made earlier this evening about looking and making sure that this, that this is exactly what we want it to cover. I was not expecting it, I guess, to be on the agenda, and I had thought I previously saw it under the consent agenda, but that's just, and Mr. Clanton, chime in if you have any other thoughts, but that was my understanding.
And I'm trying to recall our conversation on this particular one, but I do vaguely remember about having the special education, and tonight we've actually voted for that. I guess going back to Dr. Pohl and Mr. Cloud, the changes to this were, I think, state statute changes, right? So do we have a particular timeline that we need to have this approved by?
Well, the laws are in place, so you have to follow the law. KNAJ, it's in place now. You're amending it tonight to make it consistent with Virginia laws that were changed effective July 1, 2020. The policy on seclusion and restraint is meant to be consistent with new Board of Education regulations that became effective on January 1st, 2021. So that the law is in place now in both instances.
Got it. So pretty much based on what you're stating there, then, Mr. Cloud, that a higher authority than the board itself has made a decision. And so therefore it's coming down to us to ensure that our regulations are in accordance and alignment with them. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I mean, there's always a certain amount of discretion the board could have if you want to, as long as it's consistent with state law, to add other things or modify them or look at what other divisions are doing. But I think in both of these are essentially based on the VSBA models that they promulgated with the fact in mind that the regulations were taking effect on January 1st and the other changes took effect back in July.
Back in July. So do we have a certain amount of time? I mean, July is, well, we're 6 months out from that. I'm just trying to figure out, and to be respectful of what we may have had in a conversation with the Special Education Advisory Group, do we have additional time?
I think it would be fine too. I'd also point out that the MOU you just approved was written consistent with these legal changes, both in terms of where it talks about seclusion and restraint, and also it includes all the statutory changes regarding SROs that became effective July 1st, 2020. So I mean, if the board wants more time to consider the policies, I think that's fine.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to be sensitive to the additional discussion they may potentially, now that we have, we've had operating, but now that we've approved some special education advisory task force members, and that we maybe take these policies and over the next 30 days, allow that group to review and provide some feedback to us, and that we come back in maybe February or at the first part of March, maybe our work session in March, to review this based on some of the comments that they may have provided.
How about, let me think. So our first work session will be the 3rd, right?
February?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's 2 weeks though.
Weeks. Yeah.
Mr. Jordan's itching down there. What you got?
I'm waiting, whenever.
Go ahead, Mr. Jordan. Do you have a comment?
No, I was gonna let you finish your thought, and then I has a question for Dr. Birdsong or Dr. Pohl specific to the seclusion and restraint. I think it's a bigger deal than we're describing it, and I just want to ask a question about it since we started off with the.
Go ahead, ask your question.
So will you all clarify first for me? So I heard what Attorney Cloud was saying in terms of what the law says and us being in alignment with the law, and I get that piece of it. Can you clarify, does Norfolk Public Schools currently do anything around seclusion?
We do not seclude our students, and our procedures that would be put in place if this were passed would still say not to seclude students. We do restrain some students.
Okay. So going back to the discussion then, I think that especially as it relates to the restraint and seclusion policy, that we can send it back to the policy committee and also get a sense from the administration where we may be going in terms of regulations. I forwarded to you all a moment ago information I had shared with Dr. Martin earlier in terms of some other examples of some policies and regulations dealing with restraint and seclusion. I think it requires some real deep consideration and hearing what we may be doing in the future from an administrative standpoint and from a policy standpoint. So I definitely would like to see the restraint and inclusion policy go back to the policy committee and not be rushed. I think it really requires some real consideration for what our policy and practices are going to be in Norfolk Public Schools. And if we aren't going to do seclusion, then I think that should be clear in the policy, clear in the regulations, and in the MOU that we just voted on also be revised to be clear in that as well.
Okay. All right. It doesn't seem that we would be, I'm getting the impression we're not ready to vote on this yet. We'll send it back to committee. We'll take another look at it. But I think I was just thinking through the timeline. I think we should reapproach this at our March work session. Okay.
I have a question, please.
Yes.
KNAJ, can you please speak to me about why this is going to SEAC?
No,
why would this policy be going to SEAC?
All right. It'd be just JM, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, just JM, the restraint seclusion.
Okay, not KNAJ.
Correct.
Okay, so are we is the board in a position to move forward with KNAJ tonight, voting on KNAJ and not the restraint and seclusion policy? I just want to be clear.
I think we are, because they're two different things.
Right. So voting on one and not the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to get a motion to accept KNAJ.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we accept KNAJ, relations with law enforcement authorities, And because it's coming as a recommendation from committee, it does not require a second.
Okay. Can I open it for discussion?
Yeah, I think I think we need to be clear on what we're saying in terms of the committee recommendation. Are you referring to the policy committee?
Yeah, the policy committee sent both of these back.
Yeah, the policy committee just makes recommendations back to the full board. And just as we do with all policies, it still gets a motion in a second. I don't think it's any problem with getting a second. I'll second it for you for the purposes of discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Okay, can I open it for discussion, please? Any comments? Ms. Basine?
I'm sorry, there was a question and I got booted off. I think my internet connection was not stable, so I just had to log back on. Was the question about why the SEAC was mentioned as feedback, was that answered?
Yeah, we answered that.
Okay, all right. Okay.
There's now a motion and a second to adopt the KNAJ policy, relations with law enforcement authorities, and so I've opened it for discussion.
Oh,
do you have a comment?
No, I just wanted to see where we were because I just got back on.
Okay, well, welcome back. Thank you. Mr. Jordan.
One question. So as it relates to this policy and its impact on the MOU. So I know that with the MOU can be revisited at any time by either party, Norfolk Public Schools or the Norfolk Police Department. So just operationally then, if we wanted to, once the MOU is executed, if we come back in a month or 2 months after we look at restraints and seclusion and other issues, can you just explain to me what the process would be then for us to then go back to the police department or the city if there were additional changes or modification we wanted to make at any point in time based upon the will of the board?
I think if it was the will of the board, if there was a vote and a majority of the board wanted to reconsider and had some ideas they wanted to broach with the city, then it could be done.
Okay, so we would just go through our normal process and then send over to the city / the police department any items that we wanted to see reconsidered, and then both parties would have to agree. Is that how it would work from that point?
That's correct. I mean, there would need to be somebody, there would have to be someone doing the negotiation, representing the board and representing the city. And if an agreement was come to, then we would draft a new agreement, and it could be, presented back to the board and executed again. And if no agreement, then it's a question of whether to terminate the existing agreement.
And then just one other follow-up question, where the policies and the agreement speaks to the training of SROs in whatever it is that Norfolk Public Schools, the areas that Norfolk Public Schools believes is important for SROs to be trained in, when does that start? So once
the law was changed, SROs now have to be trained under the state of Virginia's procedures for SROs. Right. And all of Norfolk police officers that are participating are being trained.
Now, I understand from the state perspective. I'm saying if from Norfolk Public Schools perspective, if we wanted, for example, all of the school security officers and SROs to be trained in implicit and explicit bias, we would then set the timeline for when that training would take place. Is that how that works?
Well, and I guess you would have to provide the training, right, and work with the chief of police for when the officers can be available to receive it. Okay. But yes, that could be worked out.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Okay, Ms. Tanner, please call the question.
Dean?
Nay.
Campson,
Aye.
Clanton,
Aye.
Gabriel,
Aye.
Jordan,
Nay.
Smith,
No.
Martin.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to our last agenda item, we have matters of the board. And under matters of the board today, this business meeting, we've changed it up a little bit. We wanted to do a better job of incorporating our voice from the classroom by asking our student representative, Ms. Georgia Simpson, to share some comments from the student's perspective. So Ms. Simpson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Martin, Vice Chair Jordan, board members, and our viewers. I have been given the opportunity to contribute student perspective to tonight's meeting. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate the Norfolk School Board, teachers, students, families, and administrators on a very successful first semester. Although this has been a particularly challenging year, our district's perseverance and steadfastness has been illuminated in these trying times. In order to better understand how virtual learning has impacted students this semester, I presented a small sample of students from Morey High School with a brief survey. Almost 93% of students reported that virtual learning has adversely affected their mental health, with 84% of students reporting a lack of scholastic motivation accompanying the online learning platform as the primary adverse effect on mental health. With that being said, one of the most difficult challenges of online learning is that students often feel isolated. I was pleased by the very thoughtful and extremely selfless responses from this sample. Regarding the district's future adaptation of a hybrid learning model, many students expressed uneasiness surrounding the health and well-being of family members and immunocompromised individuals, as well as older teachers and administrators, given a future return to in-person instruction. Supplemental to these concerns, many students worry about a lack of social interaction and fear for deteriorating motivation surrounding a continued online learning experience. Ultimately, the student population does understand that this imperfect school year will never have a perfect solution. However, we continue to witness teachers and staff going above and beyond to meet both educational and emotional needs of students. If I could suggest anything, it would be an alteration to the odd and even schedule in order to account for asynchronous Wednesdays. With our current schedule, students in middle and high school who adhere to odd and even days go without seeing one set of teachers for 3 full days. For example, if the Monday of a school week is odd, students will receive direct classroom instruction from their teacher on Monday, log in only for attendance on Wednesday, and then see their teacher again on Friday. An improvement to this difficult schedule may be recognizing asynchronous Wednesdays as neutral, neither odd nor even. This may mean that students must log in to each of their 8 classes for attendance. Implementing asynchronous days as neutral could adjust the schedule so that Mondays and Thursdays would be odd days, while Tuesdays and Fridays are even days, meaning that middle and high school students will no longer have to go 3 days without seeing a set of their teachers. Additionally, making these asynchronous days neutral will allow for the intended use of Wednesdays, as students can prepare for each of their classes, as well as make up any work necessary. I am willing to answer any questions regarding this suggestion and hope it will be taken into consideration. With that being said, I am certain that second semester will be as inspiring and impassioned as the first. And finally, I urge students to continue to stay motivated and optimistic about the future of this 2020-2021 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. I appreciate your comments. Mr. Clanton, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I did. Thank you, Ms. Simpson, for sharing those thoughts. I always enjoy hearing both you and Ms. Burrs and your perspective. I did have a question for you because I can, as a Morey Commodore, I can always hear when I hear Morey come out. But my question to you is, how are you engaging with other students through the pandemic to kind of glean what their experiences are, from other high school, middle, elementary schools.
Yes, so as I referenced the small sample of students that accounted for the results, I mentioned in that about mental health, that was only a small sample of students from one of my classes. So that is a group of seniors from Maury High School. And I understand that that's not representative, but I also have, whenever I can, teachers I know in the community, any classes I have, I'm reaching out to people. I have, one brother who's a freshman in high school, and then another who's a young middle schooler, and just gauging any opinions I can from anyone I know in the community is what I'm trying to do to gauge that student opinion. And I wish there was more outreach I could do into schools, but unfortunately, I can't visit classrooms where students are learning right now.
Definitely. So I would encourage you to work with the superintendent. I know that in the past, they've had maybe some other student representatives or the superintendent. I know you used to have, I think there used to be like a student council group or something that you might be able to reach with. And you and Ms. Burrs could definitely have additional conversation. I think you're on the right track. I just think that the superintendent and their staff could help you amplify your reach. And so that you can be able to bring in all those different voices in there. But I appreciate you guys and what you're doing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do meet with, in fact, I met with my group on last Friday. So yes, we continue to meet, and I'm happy to invite Georgia to the meeting and to learn more about the survey that she just conducted. I wasn't aware of it. So I can't wait to hear more about it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Campson, go ahead.
I would just like to say to Ms. Simpson, I'd just like to say to Ms. Simpson that I was impressed with how you identified a problem, and then rather than complain about it, rather than demand that someone come up and fix it, that you sat down and you looked at your problem and then you came up with a solution. So that the first time you mentioned it to us, or to Dr. Birdsong, you also had already come up with a possible solution. And that's good problem solving. And it's the teacher in me, that's the kind of things I look for, but I was very impressed. I always used to say to my teachers, come and see me about a problem, but have a solution when you come in. And here you are, you're already there. So good work.
Thank you, Ms. Campson. Ms. Vacine, go ahead.
I too want to applaud you, Ms. Simpson, for the work that you did in taking this, looking at this sample, coming up with your research question and really executing it. I see it as a bit of a pilot study, which, I would really love to see you expand on that, because I do think, our student voice is really important. And I feel that with all of the discussions that we've had, that we may be leaving or making assumptions, especially about our middle and our high schoolers, about what they can handle or what their needs are. And so I really appreciate, it was a great summary of the research that you did do. And I look forward to hearing more about what the board can do to support our student representatives and reaching out across the system, like Mr. Clanton said. I think it'd be great to utilize our principal advisory groups if they're still in existence, as well as, the superintendent student advisory groups, and maybe reaching out to SGAs and stuff that I know are still active in some of our schools. So nice job. I loved hearing your preliminary analysis, and look forward to some more work that you might do on this. So nice work, and keep it up. And thank you so much for being a voice for the board.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, great. All right, thank you again. Let's move on to our board member sharing time, which is a board committee report. Who would like to start us off? Mr. Clanton, go ahead.
So from legislative, many of you all should have received from Advantage Strategies the recap. The general session's been in session for 1 week already. And there was a little discrepancy between the majority and the minority group in regards to how long the session was going to be. So they did come up with, they're going to do the 30 days and the governor is going to move with a special session. So they'll end up with the 4 to 6 days, but there are quite a few bills that we'll be tracking. I know that we're getting the information. I think that there's I didn't put numbers on them, but there's 31 pages of them that have implications in education. So just encourage everyone to look at that. The other item I just wanted to circle back around to, and I know that we will be, I guess in the month of February, talking about our, and going through board governance training at some particular point there. So I'd just like to raise the point that Mr. Jordan did say that we don't normally do recommendations from committee without a second. Would just like to say that that may be a custom here, but Robert's rules does say that that's not what's supposed to happen. So I'm not going to reach it up here today and get into a back and forth, but I just want to go through governance training and just say, hey, if we're going to say that we're going to do it or not, that we can kind of do it at that particular point in time. Other than that, I do appreciate our new communications. Thank you, Ms. Matthews, for making sure that we continue to get the highlights. I've seen a lot more in regards to the congratulations. It's good to hear the good things that are happening in the awards and recognitions that our teachers, our administrators, and our schools are receiving, and particularly with a lot of the schools. I'm very particular about those that are in Ward 3, so it's good to hear about Booker T. I had no idea that when we had the voices from the field in regards to what they were doing with attendance, and I asked the question, are we seeing results? Well, we had not only the principal to validate that, but she also received an award in regards to their efforts at Booker T. Washington on absenteeism. So I appreciate that and appreciate the work that you all are doing, all of communications in China 47, and look forward to the community engagement that you'll continue to do as we outreach in the community. Just continue to look at, we'll be bringing reports in regards to what's happening in the general session, but there's a lot that we'll be bringing back. So thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clinton. Any other board reports? Mr. Jordan.
Well, to my dear Ward 3 colleague, I'd just like to just further explain what I was saying about the policy committee. You know, we established the.
You can wait to governance training. We don't have to do it.
I'm just, you raised it. I just wanted to clarify so you understand what I was saying. That when we formed the policy committee, it was formed to help us expedite the many policies that come before the board. Policy still rests with the board of directors, the board, our board. All I was simply saying is that when we established the policy review committee, it was to help do some assessment analysis and make recommendations to the board. And so we would still follow the normal process from there. I wasn't debating whether or not a motion could just come straight from a committee, but we'll do that as you described. From a committee report perspective, piggybacking on the legislative piece, as an individual today, I had the opportunity to speak to the House Education Committee on a bill that deals with modifying SOLs towards growth assessments over the next few years, dealing with grades 4 and above. So I did testify as an individual in support of that legislation. There's a lot of other pieces of legislation that I agree with. We need to stay on top of from a division perspective so we can make sure our voice can be heard. I am participating still on the National School Boards Association's committee, dismantling institutional racism in education. And I will share with you all some of the topics that's being discussed there. I'm also serving on the State Superintendents African-American Advisory Board. And many of these issues that we've talked about today and continue to talk about, from student discipline, special education, gifted, those are also topics that are being discussed there and many other places as well. And I would just encourage us, or we will, I'm sure, through our retreat and through some of our work sessions, get an opportunity to further discuss some of these issues as they either are coming out of the General Assembly by directive or are just simply best practices that more and more school divisions are looking at, to the point that Ms. Campson made about breaking down barriers and building stronger relationships. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jordan. Any other reports from committees? I'll go ahead and share mine. The Norfolk Public Library Board of Trustees met yesterday and had some pretty cool news that I'd like to share. Let's see, I have it in front of me. First off, so I guess I'll start by saying we have 6 public library branches that are currently open for grab and go. The other programming, of course, because of COVID, has been discontinued. There's a ton of online programming. There's been, I think, around 20,000 different programs done over the course of the past year. And I've done a couple online programs with the foundation last spring. But anyway, so there's a lot of activity going on, but it's just going on virtually and not so much in the libraries. But again, there's the grab and go. There's all the free apps that are available on the website. And what most of those vendors did with the movies and the books and newspapers and magazines, what they did was they loosened their restrictions. Some of them would have only one person could check something out at a time. They've loosened all of that. And they've also stopped charging fees because of COVID. So there's just a world of, just tons and tons of resources available on those applications. But I just want to tell you about 2 programs in particular. Norfolk Public Libraries just announced that there's a subscription to the Tumble Book Library. It's a program that can be accessed, like I said, through the NPL website, from any device. There's no library card is needed, and it's unlimited and free. Tumble Books is an online collection of ebooks for students in grades K through 6. The collections include animated talking picture books and fiction ebooks. Readers can choose from multiple language such as French, English, and Spanish. There's over 1,477 book titles that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, you just need to access it through norfolkpubliclibrary.org, and those are free, and you do not need a library card. So I hope that our families will take advantage of that. There's also Norfolk Public Libraries now has added to their list of databases, research databases, medlineplus.gov. This is under the U.S. National Library of Medicine, full access to Medline Plus. And again, you don't need a library card. You can go on. It has a multitude of health topics, particularly for our students who are interested in any area of medicine. They can go on this. It's in any citizen. You can go on medlineplus.gov and through the NPL website, and there's information about drugs and supplements and genetics and medical tests, and there's a medical encyclopedia. There's even healthy recipes that goes in depth offers recipes for any type of dietary restriction. So there's something on there for everyone. During this time of COVID, we want to avoid the COVID-19. So I think it's a great resource for even if you're into making resolutions or just want to educate yourself on healthy lifestyles or and so forth. So I think that's a really exciting resource for everyone to be able to use from Norfolk Public Libraries. So I guess the only thing I'll close with is the other exciting news is that Tucker Library is on track and will hopefully be open in the fall. So that will be a wonderful resource for our students in our community. So that's all I have to report for NPL. Oh, I guess one more thing, sorry. I do want to go ahead and try to reschedule another joint meeting with them. I think that, I don't I think we didn't do it last year. It'd be nice to get together. I know they've asked for a time to do that as well. And another thing with Friends of NPL, I would like to reapproach this discussion about reading tutoring over the summer. If we can come up with a way to make that work this year, I think they're willing to support that program again. So that's all I had. Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Basine, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you for that update. Going back a little bit to the legislative, so next week we have the Capitol Conference, and is the majority of the board participating in that conference?
Ms. Tanner, do you know how many of the board members are registered for the Capitol Conference next week?
I believe we have Smith, yourself, Basine, Jordan, and Clanton, I believe so far.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering, and maybe Mr. Clanton might be able to answer this, but, normally we haven't scheduled or attempted to schedule any virtual visits as a board with our legislators, have we? Or has that been?
No, I haven't done any of that yet. I actually am in the process. I'm in discussions with a lot of them because of something I have going on with Sunday and Monday. So I've been more than happy to go ahead and schedule some if we want to try to do that on the Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, I was waiting to, kind of set up my own appointments, but, wanted to ask tonight, what, other board colleagues wanted to do, if was already in the works. I just wanted to get some clarification on that, but I think it would be great. I think there's power in numbers. We've done that in the past and has worked, really nicely. And, I would love to see us do that. Continue to do that even virtually. So
I'm just saying, I'll touch base with you
Okay.
offline, and then we can coordinate from there.
Okay. I was gonna say, I definitely think the coordinated approach is the best. So I appreciate you taking that, the lead on that, Mr. Clanton, and just include the rest of us as well. So we're not wasting any, we can all work together on that so we can have the best use of our time.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone want to be the last one to speak today? All right. Well, thank you all for a wonderful meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.